The Lifestylist, episode 93, featuring Desiree Pace.
I'm Luke Storey, a former celebrity fashion stylist and founder of School of Style. For the past 20 years, I've been relentlessly dedicated to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of health and spirituality. The Lifestylist podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. Today's episode is brought to you by my friends over at earthrunners.com. If you follow me on social media, if you know me, you know that 95% of the time I'm not wearing traditional shoes because they suck and they're really bad for your body and for your feet. So I'm always wearing my Earth Runners, whether I'm trail running, hiking, going to the beach, flying on an airplane, or even going to a party in Hollywood, because unlike most minimal footwear, Earth Runners actually look really dope. They have a great design. So they improve your biomechanics, the way that you walk, because essentially you're born to walk barefoot, and Earth Runners give you that ability without getting your feet dirty and gross and getting kicked out of restaurants. But what's even cooler about Earth Runners is that they're grounded. They have conductive thread in the straps and a copper plug on the bottom that keeps you electronically grounded to Mother Earth. It's fantastic. So good for you on so many levels. So if you want to check out Earth Runners, go to earthrunners.com and enter the code Luke10 to save 10% off your order. So go to earthrunners.com, enter the code Luke10, and your life will be forever changed for the better. This episode is brought to you by my friends over at Organifi. I discovered this product a few months ago, and it has changed the game for me. Everybody knows that green juice is good for you, right? Here's the deal, though. Couple disadvantages to your average cold-pressed green juice. A lot of times it comes in plastic, not good. B, it's usually loaded with sugar up to 25 grams, which is basically like drinking a green Coca-Cola. Not happening. Next is they go bad. You can't leave it sitting out, and they're really bad for travel. So I love my green juice. That's cool. Cold press. I get the sugar-free ones. I'm into it. But Organifi makes a green powdered superfood that comes in these little packets that are portable and you can take with you. So I keep them in my car and in my bag, and on demand, anytime I have a bottle of water, I can pour one of these in there and have an instant green juice. Alkalizing, energizing, gives you mental clarity. It's fantastic. It's loaded with 11 superfoods. A lot of the green powders not only taste gross and are overpriced, but they'll have like 200 ingredients. And I'm always thinking, how much of each ingredient is actually in there, okay? These 11 superfoods are the important ones that you need, like turmeric, chlorella, wheatgrass, spirulina, mint, moringa, ashwagandha, lemon, beets, matcha green tea, and coconut water. And it's sweetened with monk fruit, so it's got a 0 glycemic index. It's fantastic stuff. So if you want to check this drink out, work on your health in a way that actually tastes good and is super convenient, here's what you do. Go to Organifi.com, that's with an I, Organifi. Enter the code LIFESTYLIST and save 20% off your order. You guys know I always give you a hookup if I'm going to tell you about something cool that I discovered. So again, go to Organifi.com, enter the code LIFESTYLIST at checkout, and save 20%. It's really good stuff. I am he as you are me, and we are all together for another episode of the Lifestylist podcast. I am not the Eggman. I am not the Walrus. I am, in fact, Luke Storey. And I'm so excited to be here with today's guest, Desiree Pace. This girl is hella cool. We sat down for about an hour and a half at my hotel room in New York City and talked all things Kundalini yoga, new ageness, and just got goofy with it. And it was really, really fun. She's a great girl. I actually tried to take her class and it didn't work out. So she owes me a class, or I owe myself her class, because I could actually show up once I signed up for that shit. But we had a really great time talking about what it's like to be a spiritual seeker and a yogi in New York City. And I love her approach to all of this stuff because she takes everything with a grain of salt, much like your host, Luke, here. You know, I love spirituality, I love the new age, but I also like to keep it real. I'm not living in a cloud or living in a fantasy. I'm very much in the real world, and I appreciate people that are deeply spiritual and meditative and into yoga and all of that. But I like it when it comes with, you know what I'm saying, like a little edge. And Desiree definitely has that. So we had a great time sitting down and talking. So here's what we talked about in this episode: how she cured herself of cystic acne, depression, eating disorders, and even low self-esteem using Chinese medicine, yoga, and mind control. How she uses Kundalini yoga, kriyas, sexual energy, and rap music to build her own self-confidence. Then we talk about the dangers of self-obsession, overcoming your own ego and self-consciousness by doing embarrassing shit. Doing embarrassing shit, it turns out, is actually a spiritual practice, and she's going to tell you how. How to be a yogi but not lose your edge. You know, how to not be too corny and soft, how to avoid spiritual bypass, how to walk through the storm and keep it real, how to be an R-rated yogi, how meditation, in fact, feeds creativity, the hidden inspiration behind high fashion. So me, myself, have a background in fashion, and so does Desiree, and, she's a pretty cool chick. If you check out her Instagram, it's definitely stylized. She's got her little thing going on there, and she's definitely into fashion, but there is an art to it, and we have a very interesting piece in the podcast about that. At least I thought it was interesting. I have a feeling you will too. How becoming a raw vegan destroyed her health, and how hard it is for some people to digest raw food. And that's why, one of the many reasons that might not be the answer for a long-term health strategy for many people, and definitely was not for her. Why cockroaches are considered a superfood to some Taoist masters. How what you wear affects your mood and energy, and the high value of high fashion as art. So how to wear art. So again, that fashion piece, where's the fine line between being an egomaniac and being materialistic and actually just expressing yourself and using your body as a human hanger to display art. Interesting concepts we covered, indeed. The theory behind the chakra system and how the first three relate to and control your primary instincts. The power of singing mantras and how rough it is when the mantras are sung in English. See, that's what I'm saying. That's what I love about Desiree. We were poking fun at our own lifestyles, which is always great. And then how to overcome the awkwardness of dancing as it sometimes takes place in yoga classes. The way I overcome it is I just run out in the hall and read books until that shit's over. But she has a different strategy that she enlightens us with. So this is a really fun episode. I'm glad that I got to catch up with her while I was in the city. I look forward to having her back at some point and definitely taking her class, because she's definitely got an energy to her that I think is very cool. And I love meeting people that are on the path that, are younger too, and just doing things in a different way. It's cool. I interviewed Abby Galvin a couple episodes, and, she's in her 60s and has been doing this a long, long time. And Desiree's newer, but also has a really interesting expression of this lifestyle, which I really enjoyed getting to know myself and also sharing with you. So thank you once again for joining me. I look forward to bringing you another episode next week. I'll be in your eardrums then, folks. Tune in. Listen up, I'm going to do you a massive favor. I'm going to warn you that you do not want to miss next week's 2-part episode with my meditation teacher and personal mentor, Mr. Jeff Kober. He's been meditating for, forever. He teaches Vedic meditation. He's also an actor. You may know his work from shows like Shameless, The Walking Dead, Sons of Anarchy, and a number of other big hits. So this episode is all about the creative process and how it relates to spirituality. And I want to tell you what, this might just be, in my opinion at least, as the host, my best episode ever. Dare I say. I know I've had some good ones, but listen, Jeff Kober brings the damn heat. We sat down in my living room for 2.5 hours. This shit was bananas. We went deep into the rabbit hole of all things spiritual in what I think was a very practical and approachable way. So don't miss next week's 2-parter with Jeff Kober. To make it easy on yourself, just subscribe to the show, click that little button, and you will never miss an episode of the Lifestylist Podcast. Thank you. Desiree Pace has been teaching yoga throughout New York City for the past 7 years. In 2010, she completed her first training with Yoga to the People, followed by an advanced certification deeply rooted in the Hatha Yoga and Tibetan Buddhist lineages. As she became more and more fascinated with the mind-body connection, she decided to pursue a master's degree in Chinese medicine at Pacific College of Oriental Medicine after meeting Taoist Grandmaster Sung Baek, with whom she briefly studied. After 5 years of teaching vinyasa yoga throughout New York, she felt something was missing from her classes and her own personal practice, which led her to begin studying Kundalini yoga and meditation. In 2016, she completed her third yoga teacher training, Level 1 Kundalini yoga and meditation with Hari Jiwan, Tej, Guru Jagat, and Guru Jas in Los Angeles. She currently teaches Kundalini yoga and meditation classes and workshops around New York City, where she aims to make these ancient practices available to anyone who is interested in using this profound practice to create the life they want to experience. So here we are with Desiree Pace. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. Unfortunately, I missed your class the other morning because it was at like 8 in the morning and I was very ambitious, signed up, paid $22. And then the next morning was like, oh, hell no. I got to be at School of Style at 10. And so I didn't make it. I like to get to know guests like that. Like I did a show the other day, that was yesterday, with a woman named Abby Galvin over at...
She's amazing.
Yeah, she does Katona yoga over at the studio. And I took her class one day. Then the day I recorded with her, I took another instructor's class, got done with the class, and then recorded with her. So I was just like, it was an interesting way to start an episode. So I didn't do that today. Actually, you're my third recording today.
Wow.
So I'm
you like Abby's class?
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. It's like a workshop, each class.
It's incredible. And she was, I don't know if yours will air before hers, so listeners, that one may or may not be out by now, but I just knew when I took her class that I needed to get inside her head. Like, she has something going on. She's tapped in. So, we went about like an hour and 15 minutes or so, and just into her whole history and the whole trip with Katona yoga and how it's like Hindu hatha yoga combined with Chinese Taoism and just fucking
wild,
super trippy stuff. Yeah, it was cool.
I've taken both her classes and Naveen's classes.
Oh, cool.
It's really hard for me though because I'm 50% deaf.
Really?
Yeah. So when I go to their classes, I can't focus on the postures or what I'm doing because I want to hear everything they're saying. So I just like stop and turn around and just look and read their lips and try to get everything.
Interesting.
So it's it's either one or the other.
Do you have hearing loss in both ears or just
in
one?
Both?
Really? Because I have a 40% loss in one ear.
What happened there?
I don't know, playing in rock and roll bands, probably. Just being retarded. I remember when I first started playing in bands, my parents were like, you need to wear earplugs. You're going to hurt your ears. And I was like, I'm not going to be a nerd. It's like
invincible until you're not.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden I was like, when people talk on this side, I can't hear them anymore. What happened with your hearing?
I got all my dad's good genes.
Oh, so it's just born like that?
Yeah. He's 50% deaf too. My aunt is, like everybody.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
How interesting. So you've had to kind of adapt, huh?
Yeah. I'm pretty used to, it's been my whole life. I wear hearing aid. That's why this one's popped up. I just want to make sure that I can hear everything.
Okay, good.
He's actually hilarious though. He's kind of like Instagram famous, my dad.
Really?
Kind of, a little bit. Like when
What's
my
his
dad
Instagram?
when my dad comes to town. No, he doesn't have Instagram.
Oh, okay.
When he comes and I do all my videos of him, people freak out he doesn't do it as much anymore, but he would do, when he started getting into texting me a couple of years ago, instead of calling, he would do the voice automated text messaging. But between the Russian accent and the fact that he makes up half of his own words because he's 50% deaf, I would get like the craziest shit ever and people would just die for it. Like I would post the text message that he said. The first one that I got, which was so ridiculous, this is so bad. I was like, Dad, we need to get this under control. He's like, wow, I love sexting with you. This is the best thing ever.
That's great.
I was like, oh my God,
That's
have
hilarious.
to read this. And another time he had a birthday party. There was a party that they were supposed to go to. And he was trying to tell everybody, he meant to say party tomorrow at our house. And he ended up saying party at Tamara's house, who's our neighbor and one of their very good friends. So everybody showed up at Tamara's house.
Holy shit.
Instead of at their house.
You can't write that. That's amazing.
No, it was amazing.
Wow, that's funny. All right, I'm going to have to watch for that on your Instagram. You have a great Instagram, by the way. Those of you that are listening to this, you can find that, of course, in the show notes. We'll have that for you. But yeah, your Instagram is very cool. I think that's one of the things that attracted me to you and your work and wanting to get to know you. I was like, oh, you have a very cool aesthetic. Something I was talking to Ellie from Mindful, actually, today that I interviewed earlier, how in kind of the spiritual circles and in health and wellness and stuff, it's cool because the branding aspect has sort of like been leveled up a bit. Like when I first got into health and wellness and all this stuff, like everyone's website was atrocious. All the photography was horrible. All the fonts, like everything was really kind of nasty looking. And coming from the fashion industry, I just was always found that to be kind of like a off-putting, you know? So it's like cool when I find someone that has a really cool style, but is also into spirituality and stuff.
Yeah,
so
I love
that.
having that dynamic.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess just some people are visually oriented and some aren't. Some people don't care probably. But for me, when it comes to like taking someone's yoga class or even like buying a supplement or something, I'm way more likely to engage if my eye likes it. You know,
totally.
so
Yeah.
But anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about how you got into Kundalini yoga, meditation, all the stuff that you do. What's your journey been like? What brought you to where you are? Because it seems like you're very committed.
It's so funny because people say that, and I'm like the least disciplined person on the planet.
Really? I mean, we were like DMing on Instagram. You're like, oh, I'm doing the long Ekon cars every day at 4 a.m. I'm like, oh my God, like who could actually like keep up with that? So
yeah,
how'd you get into this
in
stuff?
terms of, I'm one of the leaders of it, so there's a lot more. It's nice to have the responsibility to show up for other people when it comes to like personal discipline, for sure. It's definitely been one of the biggest challenges. But I worked, as we spoke of a little bit earlier, I worked in fashion. I moved here when I was 17. I went to FIT and was working in fashion. And I liked it. I really enjoyed it. I'm not one of those people that had a bad experience in the fashion industry by any means. But I was really unhappy. A lot of things going on personally and stuff like that. So I remember I was working for a menswear company and my mom came to visit and she was just like, man, you look like shit. I was working like 18-hour days, taking tons of Adderall, this and that, smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. And she's like, why don't we go to a yoga class together? So we went to Yoga to the People and it was right across the street from the studio I was working at. So that was my in to yoga. But the really interesting, that was in 2010. But in 2009, I was hanging out at this place. Have you heard of Collective Hardware?
No.
It was on the Bowery. It was like the modern day Warhol factory, basically. It was 5 floors, huge. I mean, just absolutely beyond massive. And I was hanging out there. It was open 24/7. The people that were at the factory would hang out there as well. Just the most incredible creatives, artists, musicians, and everybody was hanging out there. And there was parties and stuff like that. And when I was hanging out there, I remember there was this like really interesting guy there. And he was an older man. He was Korean. He had silver sideburns and a black ponytail. And he always wore the same thing, a white t-shirt, denim pants, combat boots, and a fine Italian blazer. And he would smoke a cigarette and drink tequila.
That's New York for you.
What?
That's New York for you.
Yeah.
You know, the interesting characters like that, yeah.
He would walk around with a sword. They filmed a lot of movies there. They would film like him doing sword fighting scenes, and I never saw skills like that, you know. But I never approached him or anything. And I remember one night, a couple of weeks later, we were all sitting in the recording studio, 3:00 in the morning, listening to music. Somebody was performing, playing, and he's like staring at me from like the corner of the room. And then he comes up and sits next to me and just tells me like everything about my life, all these really dark things that happened in my childhood. I never spoke 2 words to him.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
And he just looks at me, and the only thing I remember, though, actually word for word, is he says, you have to decide to be happy for no reason. And then he just gets up and walks away. And a couple of months later, I discovered that he's a Taoist grandmaster. And so when I left fashion, I somehow reconnected with him and began studying Chinese medicine with him. And that's how I got into the Chinese medicine and stuff like that. So
yeah, I saw that in your bio.
Yeah.
I was wondering how that transpired. So that's a trip. Isn't it crazy when you meet someone who has those seeming superpowers like that? I love shit like that. Like I'm so into gurus that have, like I listen to the Ram Dass podcast a lot, and it's all these like recordings from him and his guru, and they tell these fantastic stories of those seeming like superpowers that really conscious people sometimes have, where they can look into you and just be like, and time travel back to your childhood and be like, hey, what happened to that black bicycle you had when you were 10 that got run over on the train tracks? And you're like, what the fuck? You know, It's pretty impressive.
Exactly.
But a true sage or mystic is actually not impressed by their abilities to do that because they don't take credit for it.
Totally.
You know, and the ones that take credit for it end up being creepy like cult leaders and use their powers for evil and then eventually lose those powers, you know, to the dark side.
Yeah, and that's what I love about him. And my spiritual teacher, mentor, is one of his students who I've been studying with for the past 5-6 years now. And his name is Chris Chanting. He's phenomenal.
Someone just told me about him yesterday and said, you have to get him on your show. Actually, you know what? I think it was Abby.
Yeah, he's unbelievable. Really blessed to have
And
met
does
him.
he not have a space above Hari?
Yeah,
the
and that's
Kundalini
where we're
Yoga
doing
Center?
the Echo and Cars, that Hadi studio.
It is? Oh,
Yeah.
I practiced
we
there.
all were like hanging out together.
That's neat. Cool.
Yeah. So Hadi and Chris are very close, and I've been studying with Chris for a while, and so I started hanging out with Hadi, and it's all like interconnected. It's
Wow,
really nice.
neat.
Yeah.
I know it's such like a really friendly, tight-knit community here in New York. I've
Yeah,
noticed.
it was one that I was really resistant to for a while because it didn't look like the community I wanted to be part of. It's much more, that's something I had to really be honest about, is I had a vision of like what I thought the community I wanted was going to look like. And then these are actually, it's like you can't choose your family.
Right.
It just kind of, they choose you in that
Yeah.
really weird way. So they're definitely
You should
family.
see the knuckleheads I hang out with in LA. Like my crew of guys, like we're a very eclectic group of people, you know? Yeah, it's never, I'm sure they never imagined being friends with me. I'm like dragging them up in the mountains to collect spring water. They're like, you realize you can buy that at a store? I'm like, no, just trust me. It's worth the 3-hour drive. So then you could say like most of us, I find that most people that become interested in spirituality and meditation, these types of things, have usually had some sort of catalyst, you know, some sort of painful experience or a health issue that drives them into certain dietary lifestyle or whatever the case may be. So for you, it was more like sort of having a dream, going to fashion school, getting involved in that world in New York, and then becoming really unhealthy. You're smoking cigarettes, you're on Adderall, you're just not fulfilled. Was there any point that you sort of snapped and were like, okay, I'm making a decision, like I need to find God? Or was it just kind of a natural progression where you started hanging out with healthier people and traveling in yoga circles and things like that?
No, I got very, very sick. So I was very unhappy. I went to Western doctors. My mom, you know, I was like 20 years old. My mom's like, you know, moms are worrying. She's dragging me everywhere. I went to a biomedical doctor and two actually, and my mom was convinced I was anemic because I loved fashion, got into the yoga, started hanging out with like the raw vegan crowd. So I went raw vegan, and you're supposed to be like healthy when you do that. I got so sick from the raw vegan. Personally, my experience of it was that.
I had a hard time. I was never raw vegan, but I was a vegetarian for 10 years, and it was really bad for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was a vegetarian for about 10 years, the same as well, since I was about 8 until maybe longer than that. So,
wow.
yeah, my mom is an animal activist. So
that's
she,
tough.
so she kind of, when I was like 7 years old, put a PETA magazine in my lap.
Oh, shit.
And it was just like, you decide what you want.
Right. You know, it's funny. I take side trips here, so I'll always bring us back to where we started. But I was reading an article online a few months ago about how a couple had actually been arrested in Germany because they raised their kid vegan. And the kid
I think I heard of that.
You did, yeah. And the kid had all of these developmental problems from being deprived of those key like fat-soluble nutrients that are in eggs and dairy and meat and things like that. You know, it's interesting. So I don't know. I've always had a hard time with that thing because for health reasons and ethical reasons, was a vegetarian too. But it's like my body didn't like it. Like I like the idea of not having animals be sacrificed for my own benefit and sustenance, but my body was like, F you, we miss it, you know?
Well, that was my experience when I started eating meat finally.
Right.
So I loved fashion, started the raw vegan thing, I was dating somebody at the time that was super, super healthy, but he actually looked healthy. Do you know what I mean? Like he actually looked like that stuff worked for him. So I kept trying to emulate everything that he did, not even factoring that there's two different makeups. Like men and women are totally different. What men can do with food and wellness, women have to be very, very careful, which is not something I learned until Kundalini yoga and learning everything Yogi Bhajan taught about women and hormones and stuff like that. So that was a huge wake-up call that didn't happen for me until like 10 years later. That's true.
That's a lot of the problems that a lot of women have going vegan is the hormonal cascade of destruction that takes place when you don't have the building blocks for hormones.
For sure. Exactly. Yeah. And low-fat diet, it's just all that stuff. It's a mess. That's why I like the Chinese medicine too, because their perspective on food is not really one size. It's not at all one size fits all. It's very dynamic, very curative, what this person needs in the moment. And they don't look at meat. They don't look at any of these foods as you shouldn't do it. It's what's the energetic property of this thing. that is supposed to help you. And it's when I was very sick, I was eventually diagnosed by Master, the grandmaster that I was studying with, went to 2 biomedical doctors, got my blood test. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. They said it was in my head. I had gained 25 pounds. I was breaking out with cystic acne, had such bad fatigue I couldn't get out of bed. Walking up the stairs was like not even an option at the time.
And this is after you were a raw vegan for how long?
3 months.
Wow. That's interesting because what I've observed with people that it's usually like they have a health crisis, then they go raw vegan and they do a lot of detoxing and sort of rebuilding, and they get healthy for a period of time, and then after a few months, if they even make it that long, or a couple of years, then their health starts to decline, and then they ease back in on bone broth and things that are like easier to handle psychologically, you know? Yeah. So that's interesting that you just like tanked from the get-go. Because I view like a raw vegan thing as like a great thing to do as a cleansing process for a while and kind of reset, and then, you know, build a foundation from there according to like what foods work for you individually, as you said, because we're all different.
And that's even like if you want to look at it, like my whole food perspective now is totally based off of Chinese medicine. Mm-hmm. You know, not that I'm like perfect with my diet by any means, but my approach to health and wellness is very, you know, from the Chinese medicine, from what I learned with Master and what I continue to learn with Chris. It's like, okay, like in my example, for example, I had severe eating disorders for years prior to getting into health and wellness. So my digestive system was very weak. So even something like raw vegan for me, I can't digest that. It's too hard in the system.
Me too.
Very hard in the system to digest. And
like a bunch of raw vegetables will just destroy me.
It's like the worst thing ever.
That's weird.
And I love that Chinese medicine is able to understand that, because they say like raw food is cold energetically and your stomach needs the fire of the digestive system. So you're eating the cold food, it doesn't have the fire. But like a cancer patient, for example, has a lot of inflammation and heat inside the body. So someone like that possibly could do raw vegan, and they possibly need that heat to be cooled out. But you have someone who's cold nature, you know, someone who has very sick and fatigue and tired, you put more cold inside of them, they're going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So it's really interesting how we can't really look at it as you did this, that worked for you, I'm going to do it. It's you need to look at all the parts in the whole and decide what's going to work for this system, this particular system.
I like that. And that's the interesting thing when you go to see a Chinese medicine practitioner, the first thing they do is have you stick out your tongue.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck? What does that have to do with anything? And then they feel your pulse.
Yeah.
And then like if you go to a true, you know, like a legit one, and then all of a sudden they go over and there's shelves and jars of these like bulk herbs, and then they have a little paper bag.
You're
and they're
love
like,
Chris when you meet him.
Little of this, little that, little that. Go home and boil that, and that's going to heal your kidneys, or, you know, how they work on that, like the temperature of foods and the temperature within your body. And it sounds kooky, but then you've got to realize if you have like an analytical Western indoctrination, it sounds kooky, but you have to understand that medicine is much older than our current paradigm of medicine.
So interesting.
Which isn't even, in many cases, medicine, but like it's more like illness management program, you know, the surgery and pharmaceutical model. So I love that stuff. Like even when I was a little kid, I lived in the Bay Area, and my mom would take me to San Francisco out to Chinatown. Yeah. You know, just as like a little tourist kind of thing, or field trips and things. And I loved going in those shops and the smell of the herbs, like, and then they have these big jars, like with giant ginseng roots in them and stuff like that, and they're like being preserved. I don't know. I just always was attracted to that. You know, little did I know, some years later that would like become a lot of what I do for a living. Is that kind of stuff? So funny.
I mean, at school, like I open. I mean, we have like an herbal dispensary at school. And, you know, you just go in there and look because it's like Hogwarts in there.
Right.
And just all the bugs and snake skin and stuff like that. It's so powerful, though. I remember one morning when I used to study with Master, we used to go to his house in New Jersey, and it was a small group of us. And, I mean, he was such a funny guy. He would wake up very early, or he wouldn't sleep very much or whatever. So I remember one morning I woke up because we never knew what time he was going to start. When we studied with Master, it was like, we got up at like 6:30, 7 o'clock, and then maybe he starts at 9, maybe he starts at 11. Sometimes would go until like 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning with lecture. So I remember one morning I couldn't sleep very well. So I just woke up. It was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and I went into the kitchen, and I just see him. He's like staring out the window, and he's just like eating out of a bowl. And I'm like, oh, well, I was terrified of him. So I tried to like always be like, hi, what are you doing? And I was like, Master, what are you eating? And he was like, he just like shows me the bowl, and it was a whole bowl of cockroaches.
Are you serious?
Eating them like cereal.
Holy shit, dude. That's next level. Wow.
He says, you want some? I was like, I think I'm going to make some eggs.
Wow. Yeah, that's funny. A friend of mine who's a fellow podcaster, this guy, Daniel Vitalis, he's like, his whole shtick is rewilding. So he's really into wild food, and he eats a lot of insects. So he goes out and, you know, he comes home with a bowl of grasshoppers or whatever, mealworms and shit, you know?
Yeah.
And it's sort of like a food group that's not cool to Western culture. But
they're starting to do like the crickets or something.
Yeah,
in the protein
you can buy
bars.
like cricket protein bars. Yeah. It's funny. When I landed this trip in New York, I had an old ass like one in my travel bag that was like all had turned to basically powder. And I was like, I don't like wasting food. So I like ate that cricket bar. It's funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I've never heard of cockroaches. That's next level.
Yeah. They have a lot of protein in them.
I'm sure they do. It's just from eating garbage. But I was in Cambodia a few years ago, and I didn't see this really in the cities, but way out in the middle of nowhere, just in rural areas, there'll be these little stands, and you think they're selling like, roasted almonds or something like they sell like on the streets in New York. And I'd be like, oh, what do you guys have? And it'd be a big bowl of like mealworms or these giant grasshoppers and stuff. I'm like,
isn't that the worst? You like got really hungry and then.
Yeah. Well, what's weird, what I've always thought about it really is it all in your mind though. Because if you think about seafood, like what is a lobster if not a giant cockroach or a grasshopper of the sea? And I'll like eat that. I ate a lobster tail at Chelsea Market 2 days ago. It was fucking delicious.
Did you go to the seafood place?
Yeah.
It's my dad's favorite. He drives us there every time.
It's legit. Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
So why would I eat that but not a grasshopper that's like probably more clean and has a much shorter lifespan?
Don't ruin seafood for me.
Anyway, sorry about that. Now you're going to eat like a crab and be like, oh my God, this is actually the same as lice, just bigger.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Never thought about it that way.
Or the other kind of crab. Sorry, had to do it. Okay, so you're studying Chinese medicine, and at what point was the turning point?
So we kind of like jumped around.
When your health started, so...
I left the fashion industry.
Right.
I did 2 yoga trainings. I did my first training in 2010. And I met Master in 2009. And
I love that you call him Master. That sounds like so cool. I picture him being like the samurai warrior or something.
He is, basically.
Cool.
Super samurai warrior type of... I mean, he's just like... His arms are like this thick, you know, just like pure solid muscle. His nickname is Sword Immortal.
Oh, wow.
And I forget which number. I think either 72nd or 75th Taoist Grandmaster of that lineage, the Donghanpa lineage. And his teacher, he learned how to make swords with him. So he's very adept at sword. He's like one of the best sword fighters. When I studied with Master, it was a lot of lecture because he's older now and he's traveling a lot. And he works with like cancer research boards and stuff like that. His pulse, I mean, like you said, the pulse diagnostics, he can read your pulse and tell you what your genetic makeup is, what your DNA looks like, what your parents' DNA looks like disease, a cancer at, stage 0. Like, where's the cancer going in the bloodstream? There was one woman who had, this was actually one of Chris's patients, but he's been studying with Master, so this is where he gets the skills. She thought that she had cancer in her ovaries. And, I told her, go to see Chris. And she goes to him and he looks at her and he says, you don't have cancer in your ovaries. And she even had gone to the doctor and they said, you have precancerous cells, said that. And so she goes to him and he's like, you don't have cancer in your ovaries. You need to go home and fix your relationship with your husband. And she never told anybody that her and her husband had not been getting along. It was like the picture perfect marriage. They were like doing everything. And she gets a call 2 weeks later from the gynecologist saying that they misread the test and that she doesn't have precancerous cells. So I call Chris, I text him, I say, what was that all about? Like, how can that even show up in the blood work as cancer? And he says, because she does have she has like stage 0 cancer. Mm-hmm. It's not in her ovaries though. It's moving into her breasts. And if she doesn't fix her relationship with her husband, she's going to develop breast cancer.
Holy shit.
He's like amazing. So
wow, next level.
Yeah. So I left fashion, started doing yoga. 2-3 years of teaching yoga, I wasn't making any money. So somehow I magically connected with Master. I moved back home to Baltimore. I don't remember who texted who. I hadn't spoken to him since 2009. This is 2012. And I somehow either he texted me or I texted him, and he's in Baltimore where I was living at the time. And he's like, why don't you come to this Kung Fu tournament? And the tournament was 10 minutes from my house. So I went there and said hi, and it ends up being his tournament. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of people, fighting. And I met everybody. That's where I met Chris. That's where I met everybody. So that's the moment where he started to, say, why don't you get a master's degree in Chinese medicine and study with me on the side? And, you'll have a great career out of it and you'll learn a lot. So that's how I got into the acupuncture and the Chinese medicine.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. So I've always wondered that, like, how yoga teachers make money. Like, I get how the owner of a studio makes money. I see the model there,
Yeah.
It's a few different models that they use, but they all, basically have a similar kind of breakdown that encourages you to like get on a monthly, it's kind of the idea. Yeah. And I know how reoccurring payments and stuff work as a business owner that has that kind of model as well. But I'm always looking at the teachers like, if you only work an hour a day, like you teach one yoga class at one studio a day, like how the fuck do you eat? Like,
because they don't do that. I mean, it's a hustle. I have friends who teach like 3-4 classes a day.
Ah, okay.
They're
and especially in
running,
New York, I mean, the cost of living here is astronomical.
Yeah. Privates. So
okay.
You teach at studios and you want to get some privates.
I see. So somebody takes your class and like, oh my God, I love your style. And then you go to their house or whatever and teach them.
Yeah.
And then you can charge a premium.
Yeah.
Oh.
And a lot of teachers do that. And then I found...
do the studios get pissed if you're like sort of netting customers out of the studio and doing privates, or is that just kind of the way it is?
I think it's the way it is. I don't think they also have a say, because if the student wants to have a deeper experience and like maybe they have some sort of condition, like maybe they have a knee injury.
Right.
And they can't really, like they go to the studio class, but then they can't do everything. So you go to a private and it can be more catered to what you need.
I see. Okay.
So if the studio does get pissed, I'd say that's really fucked up. And it's like, drop it. Yeah. But I think it's really nice because most people who do privates, I think they also still go to the studio. Okay. That's my understanding of it.
Okay.
It's kind of like a mix of both.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I've always been curious about that, though. Yeah. When I'm taking a class, I always I don't know, I kind of feel bad for the teacher sometimes. I'm like, how much of a cut, especially if it's a smaller class. Like a packed class, I'm like, all right, maybe they're getting a cut or like they get like a decent fee for a class. But if you go into a class and there's like 4 people there, I'm always like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
how do they
they're
eat,
teaching a lot. I mean, I have one girlfriend, she teaches, I don't even know how many classes a week she teaches. It's insane. I couldn't do it. I was like, that's not the lifestyle I want to live. I hated running from studio to studio. So I teach, right now I have 1 class a week at Chanting.
Yeah, the one that I missed, which I'm not going to be here for on the next one. God damn it. A puppy was even there too.
Puppy was there.
That looked like Yogi Bhajan. So
what else? Workshops too. They teach workshops and workshops are good. That's what I love doing. But mostly because workshops is a deeper experience. So, but it's a nice way to get a lot of people in there.
I see. Okay, so you did some teacher training and you got into the Chinese medicine. Then at what point did you start eating meat, and when did you start to the pendulum swing the other way where your health came back and you started to get stronger?
When I was doing the vinyasa yoga, I always felt like something was missing, especially because I wasn't getting any better with my health. So Chris started treating me, and I was getting into the wellness and stuff, and I couldn't really figure out what was going to make me better. And when Chris was treating me, he would get so mad. I mean, I think he hated me in the beginning. He was just like, every week you come to me and I fix you, and then you go back and you're depressed and you're miserable and you come back sicker. He's like, so I'm not treating you until you go get therapy. So he sent me to this guy, Thomas Jones. Have you heard of him?
Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh. He
is a therapist?
He's not even he's like beyond. He's the coolest guy on the planet, I think. He looks like Indiana Jones a little bit. He's really got I
love all these characters in your life. I'm like, I need to meet all these people.
Yeah, Thomas, I've sent so many people to him, and they're just blown away by him.
Sounds like a good podcast guest, potentially.
He would be an amazing podcast guest.
Noted.
He's incredible.
Okay.
So I started working with him, and he started to help me change my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And what I had to realize over time that I was using wellness and eating and food as another means to fuel the eating disorders. So I wasn't getting better health-wise. So I had to stop looking at it from a food and wellness approach and started going to Thomas. I started getting into the Kundalini yoga, but mostly just because I saw people who practice Kundalini yoga and I was like, wow, they're so pretty and radiant and bright and they look good. So that's how I got into it. And then,
partially vanity motivated then, because you said you're having cystic acne. I mean, that sounds pretty gnarly.
I was really bad at one point.
Wow, God, what does that do for you, like psychologically? Were you really insecure and felt shameful when you're out in public and things like that?
It was probably...
I imagine as a woman, it's probably much more challenging than it would be even for some men.
It was like the worst 3 years ever.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I really hid. And the irony is I launched my skincare brand while I had the acne. So that made things even worse because there was an image that I was perpetuating and created a brand. And the brand was really created because I had been attacking my skin with so many harsh products. So I wanted to make something really beautiful that would let me, be nice to my skin. And that was the original message. But then the pressure that probably I put on myself as the Instagram numbers kept going up, which was not something I ever planned on. Do you know what I mean? I never thought that would ever happen, that people would be so passionate about the brand and the story and what I was doing with the inner and outer beauty. And I just started to feel this anxiety and pressure and like, oh my gosh, what if they see me with acne? Like, what are they going to think?
I totally relate to that. That's why I never take my shirt off on Instagram because I'm like Mr. Health and Wellness and stuff. And like, I'm not in like horrible shape, but I don't have a fucking six pack, I'm not like ripped. I'm not the guy who on Instagram like shirtless all the time,
Yeah.
I probably would be if I was in another industry though. Cause it's like, I remember, I won't mention it, but there was a really big health and wellness guy years ago, and people would always like leave these really mean comments on his Facebook and stuff because he wasn't in like great shape, but he was like a really big kind of health food leader and stuff like that. And everyone like called him out on being a hypocrite so much because he wasn't like super ripped and lean, So I don't know. I think I was like traumatized from just him getting so much harassment, It's
like a real thing because I had so much anxiety that I did not show up in so many places. Like I had so many opportunities presented to me, but I was so afraid of being seen that it was really not until this year, actually, that I really started to just, Chris would always push me. He's like, you just have to you feel afraid of showing up. And the only way that you're ever going to get rid of this is you have to show up, no matter how afraid you are. And what I started doing, there's a really dumb little story that it's a good example of it. But I was so insecure about my skin that there was a bar on the corner in Williamsburg where all the good-looking guys would hang out, and they would sit and have a beer at the end of the day. And if I came from the gym and I didn't have any makeup on, I would walk on the other side of the street, particularly to avoid them.
Right.
And I realized after time that every time I did that, I would perpetuate the story. So it started to become the way that small way that you practice. I would walk on that side of the street, and it would terrify me.
Like with bad skin in front of all the hot guys.
Well, it's not. Yeah, with bad skin in front of all, which is like a Scorpio's biggest fear.
I totally understand.
So
that's like me going for at home. I still do that. The equivalent for me is wearing my like orange blue blocking glasses that are like $7 on Amazon that make you look like a total fucking douche. The store Erewhon in LA.
Yeah.
It's like a nightclub full of like hot, healthy girls. It's just insane, And it gives me anxiety actually sometimes to go there because there's too many hot women. It's just like I'm trying to go get my fucking vitamins, not trying to walk into like a club. But I'll go in there at night, like 9:00 at night when it's just bumping with my stupid orange glasses on. I'm just like, okay, you can do this, Luke. It doesn't matter. You're not going to meet them anyway. It doesn't care if they think you're weird and ugly. But we all, I think, relate, to that self-consciousness for whatever reason,
Totally. Yeah.
So you started identifying that and going, fuck this, I'm just going to own it and walk by the hot guys.
Well, it's like that was like the first approach to it. I started to finally take Chris's advice. It's like we have a little joke. He's like, you've been my student for 5 years. You've never taken my advice. So he like never gives me advice anymore, which is great. But he does though. But it was the first time that I started to realize that we have so many ways in which we feed our neuroses, and that keeps it alive. So every time that the first time I walked across was traumatizing. The anxiety, the real reason I asked him the question was because that first time that I walked across and that anxiety, my question for Chris was, those feelings, are they going to create illness inside the body? Because I never did it enough times to conquer the fear. I just did it enough times to feel the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
Second time was kind of like, ugh. Third time I was like, okay, sure, why not? By like the fourth and fifth time, I was like, hey, how's it going? You just stopped, feeling afraid. And I had briefly dated a guy in February who worked in menswear. He had a clothing line. And I love menswear so much. I miss it so much. And so that kind of rekindled my love for fashion, for music. There was an amazing rapper there that reminded me how much I love rap music, because when I got into wellness, I was like mantras left and right, which are amazing and practical, but like the rap, really, I loved the music. But one of the models at the show, the man, he had acne. And in the lookbook, they shot him with the blemishes. And he was so confident and just so cool that I knew there was something there. So I started to play with like not wearing makeup and just trying to figure out where that confidence, where does it come from and how do you get it? And a lot of what helped also was the Sat Kriya, one of the Kundalini meditations, really broke me through a lot of insecurities and kind of allowed me to take those steps and face those fears and stuff like that. So, but I really think it was that model. Honestly, I was just like, man, he doesn't give a fuck. Like he has blemishes and he doesn't care. He thinks he's cool. And you know what? Everybody else thinks he's cool because he thinks he's cool.
Yeah.
That's all that matters.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about insecurities like that. They're sort of self-perpetuating because you get reflected back to whatever you're projecting in terms of your own self-worth. So it's like if your self-worth sucks, people devalue you.
Exactly.
It's fucking crazy.
It's wild.
It's like the worst sort of karmic trick of the universe, that's like, God, if you're insecure and like hate yourself, like why doesn't it garner love and approval from other people? But it actually repels other people.
Exactly.
It's crazy the way that works.
Yeah. Somebody you should interview for your podcast is Lacey Phillips. Did you hear about her?
No.
Free and Native.
Oh, I know that site. Yeah. Another well-branded and well-curated site.
She just
really
redid
beautiful.
her site. It looks amazing. But she's also someone who's a big influence on me on increasing self-worth, increasing confidence, and how to actually do that in a very practical way. So I did a lot of reading on her site. I did a couple sessions with her, 1 or 2 sessions, and really kind of combined what she taught me with some of the Kundalini yoga, and she really helped me break through a lot of insecurities and helped me learn how to increase my own self-worth through some of the tools that she taught me.
Cool.
Yeah.
It pains me deeply to have to interrupt this fantastic conversation with Desiree, but listen, I'm giving away 2 free tickets to the upcoming Bulletproof Biohacking Conference, October 13th through 15th in LA. It's right around the corner. I've been the last 2 years. This is a fantastic event. I'm going to be running around the whole time. If you win, you're going to come hang out with me and thousands of other wacky biohackers, okay? So here's what you have to do to enter to win the tickets. Get ready. You're going to text the word Bulletproof Luke to the number 44222. So pause the podcast for a second, grab your phone, text the word Bulletproof Luke to the number 44222. Now, if you're outside of the USA and you don't have a US phone number, that's not going to work. So if you're international, if you're fancy like that, here's what you have to do. You got to open up your browser, put in this URL address, www.bit.ly/bulletproof-tix. So that's bit.ly/bulletproof-tix with the TIX, okay? Otherwise, make it easy on yourself and text Bulletproof Luke to the number 44222. These tickets are worth $1,000, dude. It's a really great contest, super easy to enter. And I'm going to announce the winner next Monday, the 9th of October, which is like, just a few days before the event. All right. So enter. Hope to see you there. Peace out. And now back to the interview with Desiree Pace. Well, thanks for the tip on the Free and Native girl. I always wondered who was behind that. I've come across it at different times, and then for some reason never pursued it because I didn't get like exactly what they do. But it's one of those ones that I come across when I'm researching people for the show and stuff like that.
It's been amazing to watch her process because when I first got into her website, she was a wellness coach. But don't take my word for that. She was really about food and hormones and this and that,
right,
and healing. And somewhere along the line, she seamlessly, beautifully, because it wasn't like this big announcement that I'm doing this and I'm doing that. She just shifted into manifestation, and she has just blown up since then. I mean, that's like where her real juice is. She's so grounded in it. It's not like this like fluffy, it's so practical. It's almost like very Virgo, but she's not, I don't think she's a Virgo, but it's very like calculated, but also very easy and applicable.
So in addition to her kind of helping you with the inner confidence and just self-acceptance and all that piece, like what, because now like I look at your skin, you're sitting very close to me. Listeners, we're like 2 feet away from each other. Your skin is like a fucking 10-year-old. Like you have really, really beautiful skin. So aside from just positive affirmations and like having a good attitude.
Positive affirmations didn't work for me.
Okay, so
honestly,
you tried that?
They did not work for me.
You're like, I am beautiful and I have clear skin. Not happening. So what happened? I mean, what I know about skin, I've never had like acute skin problems per se, but I always just intuitively know if somebody's trying to put some sort of topical treatment on their face, it's probably not going to work, that it has something to do with their detoxing pathways or hormonal imbalance or something like that, where the skin health is really coming from the inside, not so much the outside. So how did you fix that?
Chris had always pushed me to find my sexuality and to feel sexy, to feel beautiful, to feel confident. And I couldn't figure out how to do that when I first started getting into yoga and wellness, because I had perfect skin when I was in fashion and I was dressing up and I was going out and I was enjoying life and I felt really good and I felt hot. Do you know what I mean? And then I got into yoga and wellness and I was just like hemp, granola, green juice, drinking, like kind of situation. And I thought that I had to take on that construct to be a wellness person, to be a yogi. And really, it was this year that I started doing the Set Kriya in January. I think that kind of woke it up a little bit. Actually, let me take that back. When we did the Long Ekon Cars last year, the 40 days of the Long Ekon Cars, that opened up. I was kind of like, something feels different. And I started to slowly move away from the granola kind of like, I totally respect the lifestyle, but I was like wearing the turban all the time and that wasn't me. Do you know what I mean?
You're talking to a guy, I wear like all black in every single Kundalini class.
Exactly.
But I asked my teacher about it. She's like, dude, wear whatever you want. Who cares?
You have to do whatever.
Yeah.
You know, Hattie G even talks about it.
Which would have turned me off if she was like, well, you're not really going to get the effects if you don't wear a turban. Like every once in a while she'd be like, hey, you should cover your head in this part because, you know, energy, blah, blah. Yeah. All right. So I put on a baseball cap, but it's just, I don't know. I don't own anything that's not black really. You know, I'm not trying. It's
and
just,
if you did, it wouldn't feel good, right?
Well, yeah. It's just when I shop, I don't like look for a pink thing, you know. It's just like, oh, that's a cool shirt, it just happens to be black. So anyway, well,
it's like if you put on a bespoke suit, like would that feel good to you? Okay, then if you put on like what's like,
well, this is I've talked about the psychology of fashion a lot, having been a stylist before, and women get it because women like to feel beautiful. Men sometimes aren't that intimately aware of like how they feel in clothes, but I've explained to guys like, if you go into Barney's and you like try on a Saint Laurent suit or a Dior suit, like you're going to immediately feel emotionally and mentally different than if you go to Ross and like try on like some,
and that there's so much energy there that people don't know.
Yeah. So I'm a firm believer in that.
Yeah.
But also there's a fine line, and it's a slippery slope to have your ego identified with like what types of garments you're putting on your meat suit, which is like the other end of the spectrum where your self-worth is derived from like the fucking labels you wear or whatever, which is so vapid and such a dead-end road. Yeah. But I do believe in the energy of clothing and just the way that you feel. And I've even gone so far to think about it like this, where it's like high fashion. Part of what you're paying for is the glamour, which is totally phony because you have a label on your shirt or dress or whatever, right? But if you think about the care that goes into the design of a garment like that, like an artist created that suit, right? There's something about it that's more nuanced than a cheap suit from Banana Republic, let's say, right? Yeah. Then the materials with which it was constructed, the care with which it was actually put together and sewn together, right? So there is actually just a higher level of consciousness in the whole creation of that garment. And I think when you put it on, the way that it forms to your body sort of transposes to the way that you feel.
Yours is like the nice version, right? It's like the
yeah. Well, I mean, you know, this because I'm trying to like walk the both lines here, coming from fashion too. But I explain this to guys, especially when I wouldn't get this deep with it when I was working with a client, and they're like, even if they had money, they still like oftentimes celebrities and musicians, they don't want to spend money because they're used to getting everything for free. And so they say, well, why should I fucking get this suit that's $2,500? I'm like, dude, just put it on and then we'll talk about how you feel. And they put it on and they're like,
whoa.
Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're going to perform in the music video or in the photo shoot or whatever differently than they would in the one from Topshop.
This is like my favorite kind of topic ever. Okay. You have no idea, because that's what really helped me transform.
Okay, cool.
And people want to know like why, how did your skin get better? They want to know my diet. They want to know the products.
That's what I was
use.
getting at. I was like, were your hormones jacked up?
No, because I told you in the beginning, I'm terrible with discipline. Okay. So I never did the hormone diet. I would do it for like 2 days, and then I would like be like chocolate or French fries or like I like to enjoy it, and my family's
I can tell.
Russian.
I liked you when you walked in and I was eating bacon. I was like, I hope she's not like a vegan yogi that's going to hit me.
I was like, can I have some?
Going to spray paint my leather jacket with a PETA sign or something. you came in, you're like, I'm starving. I'm like, you want some bacon? You know, you're like, yes. So yeah.
Yeah. So it's, I mean, I ate well, you know, but I could never get it better. And so definitely credit the Sut Kriya, which I started in January. But at the same time, I met that guy that was in fashion, and I started dressing up more because I was reintroduced to my love for the fashion industry, and started listening to rap music, which kind of made me feel really sexy and powerful. Started getting really inspired by French women. So dressing like them and just feeling, it's a feeling, the sexiness, and especially for a Scorpio, you know, they have to feel sexy, and everybody has different things, you know, like maybe somebody needs to feel cute or pretty or very girly, you know, mine's like this power and feeling.
Scorpio power.
Exactly, but it's a real thing, right?
I get it, yeah.
So I think really that I can 100% to you say that's what cleared my skin up.
That's crazy.
It's just feeling beautiful again and feeling
attitudinal.
Attitude is everything.
Wow, interesting.
You know? And you know, I also, another thing is really the mind. In a lot of ways, a lot of the things I was doing when I had acne was perpetuating the acne. So like being obsessive of like washing my face or like looking in the mirror so much or using so many products, that what I started to do, I said, okay, I've been doing this way for 5 years and it's not fucking working. I can keep banging my head against the wall, or I need to change something. And I would think to my ex-boyfriend, he had perfect skin. I mean, like perfect skin. I was afraid to even like reuse a towel because it was like dirty, you know? And so I started to think, okay, what would Jared do?
That's funny.
Like terrified of Jared. I said, what would Jared do?
What would Jared do?
So,
you could actually get one of those necklaces that was like
WWJD.
Yeah.
He would love that. So, okay, he doesn't wash his face that much. He just puts his cream on at night and then just goes to bed. You know,
that's my skin regimen. For a 46-year-old, not to toot my own horn, but I have decent
great
skin. I never ever put soap on my face, ever. Hot water and then like some kind of oil concoction afterward. And I never have acne or anything. And
that's because your skin. What I started to also say to myself over and over again was, if my skin can make this, it can figure out how to fix itself.
Oh, that's
if it can make that, it can figure out how to not make it.
Right.
So I need to get out of the way and just kind of like let it, which was obviously very hard in the beginning, because when you have a problem, your first nature is to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You just
I know
fix
exactly. Yeah, that's how it is with my back. It's like I'm always on to the next like miracle cure for my back pain or something.
Chris.
And then there's time and it's like I'm just like, fuck it, I just give up. And then either it stops hurting or I just forget about it. I'm not sure, because I don't have that acute awareness of it that seems to perpetuate it, you know. It's interesting.
And I think that's kind of, you know, I love my dad, especially as I'm getting older and he's getting older. He's kind of becoming this like Buddha, which is really funny because he's like the most flashy, flamboyant, like Russian party animal ever. And he just tells me the most simple things that I would discard a lot, because it's just like, you know, family and don't listen to anything your parents say.
Of course. I didn't listen to my dad till I was like 40 years old. Now I call him like, what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
Like,
I call
all
him
of a sudden my dad is a fucking genius, you know.
Genius.
Like, I'm like, did he get smarter or did I just become less arrogant and willing to listen to him? I don't know.
It's really fascinating, because he would say things like, you know, just don't worry about it. Stop thinking about it. And I was just like, how can you possibly do that? You know, like, it's here, it's there. How am I supposed to stop thinking about it? And he's like, just do something else. Don't think about it. And that's what actually healed it, was I stopped thinking about it. I stopped looking in the mirror. I stopped obsessing over it. And the other thing, going back to the clothes conversation, is he would say to me, because when I was like super granola, I mean, he fucking hated it, because Russians are like all about the labels, you know, and I always kind of disdain them for that reason. I was like, you're so pretentious and this and that. And it wasn't until the last couple of years that I started to really respect it, because we had a conversation about it, and he says, baby, like if you look good, you feel good. And if you feel good, you look good. And that's the formula. And he says, I put this on because I like it, because I like how it looks. I like how it feels. And then what I started to realize was that when he would go into these stores, like he loves Gucci, loves, Versace, loves all these like very, when we go shopping in these stores for him, you just see how different there's a feeling of power that comes when you can purchase something like that. And he works very, 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 very hard, and they came from nothing. So seeing his perspective on it coming from nothing and being able to buy something like this, all it does is equals power. And as we know from the Kundalini yoga, like it can be good power, it can be bad power. It doesn't matter. It depends what you use it for. And I just love looking at clothes as a way to access some sort of power inside of you. And possibly, like that's what I was saying, yours was the nice version. You're like, well, there was an artist behind it. And I'm like, oh, whatever, it's fine. That's nice. Cool.
Yeah.
I'm like,
You're like,
I just
shit looks dope.
It.
That's what's behind it.
Well, some people, like you said, I do agree that you can possibly get very egotistical about the name brands for sure. But I think also as I get older and I appreciate nicer things, there's something about being like, especially because I work so hard to be able to afford nice things. So if I can purchase something, it really has all of that weight behind it, like all the hard work that I did to be able to get something nice for myself. That's beautiful. That has a lot of value to it. And it makes me feel really good when I put it on.
Yeah, I think it's all about awareness and intention, right?
Exactly.
So like I have a fucking really nice car that my business leases. It's a BMW X5. It's a 2016. It's fucking gorgeous and it drives like a beast. But if I'm attached to that car, and if something happened and I were to lose that car and I would feel a sense of loss, then I have a bad relationship with that car.
Exactly.
Like I have to be in a place in my life where I could appreciate having no car or having a total piece of shit hoopty that like girls don't think is cool at all. And if I have the awareness that like I'm attached to my self-worth, in other words, is like interrelated to the car that I drive, then I've lost the game, And not that doesn't sneak in.
Have you tried
sometimes.
the other car?
I've rented piece of shit cars. Yeah. And you know what? I actually have no problem with it.
Yeah.
But I wasn't in Hollywood, so I don't know. Take away my car for like a 6-month experiment and give me like a piece of shit and make me be like an Uber driver and like not be cool. Nothing against if you drive Uber, but whatever, take a pay grade, loss or downgrade my status socially or something. Yeah. But it's the same way with clothes. It's like there was a time in my rock and roll phase when I was playing in bands and stuff, like I literally would not go to the grocery store. I wouldn't go anywhere unless I looked like I was like going on stage to perform with a rock and roll band. And if I went out somewhere socially, if I wasn't like the coolest looking fucking guy in like a whole club or whatever, it would just drive me crazy. Like if there was someone like doper than me, I'd be so pissed. I mean, this is like hard to admit, but I was like really invested in my hair and I was so self-conscious and just all my clothes were like this whole thing. And then as I started to sort of evolve a little bit and learn a little bit and get more into spirituality, I started to do experiments, kind of like you're talking about, walking by the hot guys with acne.
Yeah.
I would just start to like, it wasn't even intentional, but I'd go out and find myself just wearing like totally lame sweats and like a dirty t-shirt and my hair not like fixed, and I didn't even notice that I was doing it. And then I'd catch myself like, oh, that's weird. Like I don't give a fuck anymore.
Yeah.
And so there's a period where I sort of just lost the attachment to having to be presented in a certain way. Right. And so now it's kind of cool. I have a sense of freedom because I might go out one day like looking super dope and my shit is like on point and I feel really good about it.
Yeah.
But I also don't give a fuck if I go out looking like a total nerd or
right.
Literally like wearing like a dirty t-shirt that like is wrinkled and I look homeless or whatever. There's hot girls around. That's kind of like
the thing now.
I don't.
The homeless look.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah,
no, really.
Yeah.
I walk around Williamsburg and there's like some homeless people that I don't know. Maybe I just can't tell if they're like. If I like literally, I text my friends all the time and I like take like a little. I'm like, is this like comme des garçons or are they homeless? I don't know which. Like, do I like flirt with this person or are they homeless?
Right. Should I leave them some change or give them my number? But yeah, I think that's the distinction there, is it not? Yeah. That it's like, what's my intention? Am I like trying to impress because my self-worth naturally and inherently, just me as a naked human being on the planet, is so low that I'm propping myself up? Or do I actually feel decent about myself? And a nice clothing or a nice car or something on the material plane is just an add-on because I like nice shit. Like with my car at home, I don't hate that if I go on a date that like I have a nice car and the girl's probably going to notice that I'm doing something right. Like I'm aware of that. All right, I'll admit it.
I always like wonder what the guy's perspective is. That's why I'm laughing.
Well, you're aware of it. You know, like you feel a little better about yourself going to pick a girl up in a BMW than if, you know, an 87 Tercel or something. But really what it is, dude, when I drive around in that car, especially on road trips and stuff, it is such a dope car to like just the driving experience. Right. I don't know. The Germans got that shit figured out. I just took a trip up to Napa Valley and I just drove by myself and I was just cruising around in the mountains and driving super fast. I went out on Point Reyes, which is this beautiful area above San Francisco, and there's no cops out there. And I was like in a BMW commercial in my mind, like classical music cranked, which is like, you know,
classical music.
Yeah. Just, you know, like literally like a BMW commercial, you know, and just having the best fucking time. And I really just enjoyed the machinery of the car, but no one could see me. Yeah. I wasn't like Instagramming like my Rolex with the BMW steering wheel and shit, you know, like the douchey humble brag. I'm by myself, just really being grateful for like a really nice piece of equipment that I get to play with, you know.
I think you said something really important. It's who are you trying to impress? I think if you do all this to impress yourself, then you're clear.
Right. So like you're saying, if you get to go out and buy a beautiful designer dress or whatever, it's like
because you want to
it's representing yourself. And it's representing the hard work and you know where you've arrived in your life to have the ability to do that, or your dad coming from nothing and being able to walk into Bergdorf and be like, cool, give me that suit, I don't even care how much it costs or whatever. Yeah, he loves shopping. Really? That's funny. Not many men do.
It's like
for clothes at least.
Oh yeah, he like says he hates it and then he loves it, and then like we can't find him for hours, and then he's just in the store trying on the same thing over and over again. He can't buy anything without my stepmother's thumbs up. So he'll just try 1,000 things and she'll be sitting there. She loves shopping too. She actually turned my bedroom, which is probably the size of this hotel room, into her closet. Yeah.
My business partner, Lauren, has a 2-bedroom apartment and one of the bedrooms is a giant closet. Yes. Yeah. I know that. And so it's a nice luxury to have. Yeah. Okay. So you mentioned a couple things that you used for your awakening and healing, like Sat Kriya, and you referred to a couple of these Kundalini yoga meditations and practices. There will be people listening to this that don't have any idea what you're talking about. So explain some of those things. I mean, I talk about Kundalini yoga a lot in my class, I guess it is kind of a class, on my show. And when I get back to LA, I'm interviewing Guru Singh, which is another big like Kundalini teacher in LA. And so it's something I talk about a lot. But give us a download of some of the practices and how they work and what they do.
So Hadi Jivan actually told me to do Sat Kriya last year for 31 minutes. And this practice, it's if you look at the chakras, it works on the first, second, and third chakra, which is all your fundamental fears, doubts, insecurities, neuroses. Its navel point is where your mind is. So all those like neurotic thoughts and stuff. Actually, Yogi Bhajan says your mind is in the navel, and then what you think is the mind up here is actually the projector screen. So whenever...
Holy shit. Dude, you just tripped me out. Hold that thought. I just had a little Kundalini awakening. Now there's all of this science speaking to the fact that your gut biome is where most of your neurotransmitters are created, and they call it your second brain. Mm-hmm. See, because this yogic stuff, when I hear like, oh, Yogi Bhajan said that when you press here and do this kriya that like you're setting your ancestors free or whatever. I'm like, really? Like, how do we know? You know, I still do it. It still feels good, but
I'd still do it.
But when you say like, oh, your brain is in your gut, I'm like, who the fuck made that up?
Yeah.
But it actually, a lot of these things that end up making perfect sense. And I just made that correlation where your gut biome and all that bacteria, there's literally like consciousness and intelligence within all of those organisms inside you, and they're manufacturing B vitamins and serotonin and dopamine and melatonin and all these different things.
All the things that make you feel
right.
Good. So
okay,
like,
so
when you like think the feelings are coming. So I loved that. You know, he says
so your
third chakra.
So go to the one. So your brain is in your.
So the mind.
The mind.
Okay. So first chakra, root chakra, it's all like your roots, like your home, family, sex, security, money. First, second, and third chakra is really those things.
Like instincts.
Like, yeah, like, do I have a roof on my head? Can I feed myself? Am I loved? Do I feel loved? Am I secure? Am I confident? Am I this? Am I that? Do I have enough money in my bank account? So you start to, like, sexuality, all these things. So people with, insecurities, it's the third chakra. It's this. People who are very fearful. It's, first and second chakra. Eating disorders, third chakra, stuff like that. So third chakra is your source of power. And it's also the mind, as Yogi Benshen says. So the third chakra is in the mind. So that's when we do like a lot of the breath work and the breath of fire. We say Satnam when we're doing the inhale, exhale, Satnam, 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 because you're pumping the navel. So you're starting to pump out some of the subconscious thoughts that are inside the mind. So he's saying mind is in the navel point, in the solar plexus. And then what you think is the mind, like what you're thinking up here, is just the projector screen. So if you think about it that way, if you work with Sat Kriya and you work with the first, second, and third chakras, it can blast you through insecurities around your body, around money, around sexuality, around creativity, especially, which is where I'm very passionate about. Because a lot of what I study with Master and Chris is that, and don't quote me on this, is my interpretation of it, is that none of that shit matters. What you eat doesn't matter. What mantra you play doesn't, it all helps. It all does something. But everybody came here with a purpose and a passion and a calling, or you wouldn't be on this planet if it didn't happen. People come here with a thing. Like, maybe yours is music. I can't play music. I'm tone deaf. I cannot play, I can't sing. You can play music. I can write. I don't have to do anything to learn how to write. Somebody else can do this and do that. And if you're not expressing that, then you're going to have illnesses. You're going to have diseases. If you're not, like for me, as a woman, I need to feel beautiful and sexual. Not sexual like, like a whore, but like just confident. like, just like, I like to think of That's like hilarious. A French woman, like they're very sexy because they're confident. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if I don't...
That's like embodying that feminine energy.
Exactly.
It's creative energy, sexual energy, and that context is all sort of the same, and it has little to do with sex.
Totally.
That's my interpretation.
Yeah. So when you start to clear out those insecurities using the Sat Kriya, Guru Jagat puts it perfectly. She says, it will change how you feel about yourself. And it started to clear my skin up. It started to clear a lot of the neuroses up and out. It started to make me really, really confident, which I loved. Because I personally think that confidence is a superpower, and with confidence comes anything. Because it's like you can do all the Kundalini yoga and meditations. I focus a lot on prosperity, or I did for a little while, because I loved that the meditations could bring you tremendous amounts of prosperity. But if you're not confident, you're just not going to show up for yourself. So Sat Kriya really helped me break through a lot of insecurities that were causing a lot of health issues and stuff like that. It's just disease in the body. Mm-hmm. So I love Sat Kriya. I'm very passionate about it.
Could you tell our audio listeners what it sounds like?
Sat nam, sat nam, sat. You have to really pull the navel in and up.
Thank you. I love that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you do it for 31 minutes.
Well, Hadi Jivan told me to do it for 31 minutes. Okay. And then I started doing it for 31 minutes. And I was in LA for training at the time. I was flying back and forth. And so I was there for like a weekend. So I had a week actually. So I was, did it for a couple of days. And Sat Kriya is not one of the more enjoyable meditations. You just want to like kill yourself in it a little bit.
I've done it in workshops. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, it's just really uncomfortable for some reason. Some people love it. I have students, I give them Sat Kriya and they're like, that's the best thing ever. And I'm like, what's wrong with you? I just don't get it. I despised it. So I was doing it for 31 minutes. And then at the time, I was dating my ex, Jared, and I started having all of these visions of him dying tragically. Like gory, like Game of Thrones kind of situation.
Damn.
Yeah. So after 3 days of 31 minutes of just blood and gore and I just said I went up to Hadi Jivan and I was like, I can't do this meditation anymore. I said, it's really hard. I'm like whispering it. And he's like, why is it hard? Because I'm the person in training. I would sit like front row and center and just like lock into the thing for whatever. And so I don't think he thought I could physically not do it. So I was like, I'm seeing all these visions of my boyfriend dying and this and that. And he just goes, and what's wrong with that? And I was like, everything. But then he said, if that's happening, it's obviously inside of you and your mind and this and that. So you have to do it to clear it out. So I didn't have the strength to do the 31 minutes at the time because it was really hard. So a year later, after doing a lot of other, just going to classes and doing a lot of clearing, I went back to it in January and I was doing 11 minutes of it. And I mean, I can't even begin to tell you, in 2 weeks, I felt infinitely more confident than you're talking to somebody who we talked earlier with cystic acne, had been so painfully insecure that I couldn't even go outside. I would hide in my apartment all day long. To go to feeling confident for the first time in 5 years, it's huge. And it was free. I just did 11 minutes of it.
That's crazy. And you couldn't attribute it to anything else. It's not like you got on meds or like got a great shrink or something like that.
Nothing, no. Absolutely not. Second time that's happened, I did another one, which I don't ever give to beginners, but Sudarshan Chakra Kriya. I was severely depressed. I was on all kinds of medication. In 2010, I went off the medications, but I didn't find the Kundalini until about 2015 and 14, sorry. And I started doing Sudarshan Chakra Kriya, and after 2 weeks, my depression was completely gone. I mean, like, I even tested it. I tried to think like depressing thoughts, and I was just like, nah.
Wow.
Just bored with that.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Sakriya I love.
You don't seem depressed.
What's that?
You don't seem depressed.
No, it totally, I mean, it was just, I can't even relate to how that felt anymore. I don't remember, I can't even fathom like being in that space anymore. I have bad days, I'm human, I want to sit on the couch and watch Friends all day.
Yeah.
But it's 1 day, 1 hour. It's not a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, month,
Yeah, I understand that.
So Sakriya, I think just, anything, you do anything, even just 3 minutes is going to profound. I mean, my clients they don't have time for 11 minutes. I don't have time for 31 minutes. I don't have time for those kinds of things, but I give them like 3-minute meditations. Because if you can't do 9 minutes, then you're fucked. Mm-hmm. So they have experienced profound changes from like addiction meditation, ego eradicator, breath of fire, just something really light but powerful too. Yeah.
I was talking to Ellie today about like, I wish I had time sometimes to like take teacher training for yoga or to become a meditation teacher or something like that, because I've benefited so much from that stuff. It's not that I want to like do it full time per se, but when I give public talks and things like that, I want to be able to drop stuff on the audience, but I don't want to be irresponsible. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a trained Kundalini yoga teacher. I've just been doing it for a few years, and I know, a few things. So I don't ever.
But the trainings are on the weekends in LA.
Yeah, I know. But like, I could be working on my business. I could do something that like moves the needle in another way,
Yeah.
But I did cheat a little bit. I did an event. Last night it was actually at Cat Beauty, and I did a talk over there.
I love them.
Yeah, and I started out. I just did like a little ego eradicator for like a minute, and I was like, "Don't tell anyone, you guys. Like, I'm not authorized to use this technology. I'd never want to like."
Well, you know what? I think Yogi Bhajan. Like, I don't say go teach and do this and do that.
Yeah.
But there's one book, don't quote me on this either, but here's my thing on it. There's one book where Yogi Bhajan says, learn these kriyas. Once you've learned them, share them with everyone. So something simple like a little bit of ego eradicator, breath of fire, addictions meditation. Like, I don't think that for something like those small seeds that will help a lot of people.
Yeah.
You need to go through.
That's my view. I mean,
but if you're going to do like, I would never say for you to teach like Sat Kriya or Sudarshan Chakra Kriya or like these more complex, like juicy kinds of kriyas.
And those are the ones that I really like, because those, I think it's like the former drug addict in me, but I love the kriyas that like get you high as shit, like where you pass out and stuff, it's like, oh dude, Tage does, and I never remember which one's which.
A different story.
Yeah, I mean her classes can be, especially the workshops, they can
so
be
loopy.
They can be super intense, and
she's like popcorn
like the ones where there's like one where you do like a number of inhales, whatever it is, 9, you're like like that kind of thing, and
all
you're doing stuff with the arms, and I don't know how many minutes there, but it goes on for quite a while, and at the end you do that hold. Yeah. And it's like, whoa, you're just like out there. I'm like, I love that. I would do that every day. And then I can never remember. I get it kind of from Wim Hof breathing, another technique that I do. It's sort of like holotropic breathing. But I don't know. The breathing stuff in Kundalini Yoga is my favorite.
Yeah, because you're oxygenating for the first time.
Yeah, it's just like, it's so invigorating. And then also something about the practice too that I really like, which I never thought I would. It took a lot of like prying my mind open. Is all of the chanting. Yeah. And I think the reason that I'm cool with the chanting and I've come to like it is because I like the effects. Just using your voice like that and the resonance of the group of people. There's just something magical about that, like that actual and literal vibration between the different.
To echo in cars.
Yeah, no, I've done it. I've done it at the morning sadhana, and they'll do the long ones and stuff. But the thing with the chanting, I love as long as it's not in English. Like a lot of the Kundalini mantras will be like mostly in Punjabi or Sanskrit or whatever.
Gurmukhi,
yeah, Gurmukhi. And I'm like, yeah, cool, great. Like whatever. I know that there's good intentions behind the words. It's not like go kill your family. It's saying something positive. So I'm down. But then when they get into English and they're like, you are a beautiful creature, fly to the stars. I'm like, dude, I literally like want to leave the room. I become so mortified. I'm not even embarrassed because other people, I'm just embarrassed to myself. So I'm like, if you're a singer of Kundalini mantras, like, please don't do them in English. I fucking can't stand it.
What was the one? We were at White Tantric Yoga a couple of years ago in New Mexico. So there's 2,000 people there. Oh my gosh, what was it? There was one that was in English that was for the kids. That's like, I am happy, I am good. And so we had to sit there. Yeah. No, we were sitting, you had your partner, and you had to sit there with your hands around your knees as if you're like pissed off and like a child and like hugging your knees and just like with your head down. Yeah. And I am happy, I am good, I am happy, I am good. And like, I hated it. And so I kept looking up to see if anybody else hated it. And all the men, like just even like the hardcore Sikh, like Kundalini yogi men, I just looked at the men and they were just like, yeah. Like just not having it at all.
I don't know. I don't know. It takes me out of the zone. Yeah, there's one that's like, I am bountiful, beautiful. It's just like, oh my God, stop. But then that's like the bridge. But then it goes back into like the thing. I'm like, okay, cool, we're cool.
And then you're like, no.
And the other thing I always have had a hard time with is, well, sometimes when you have to like pick a partner, I still get awkward where they're like, cool, go find someone like that. I'm going to be the guy that like doesn't end up with someone, the picking the partner gets a little awkward because I don't want to like interact with people sometimes. But it's when there's like a dancing thing.
Oh, God, I hate it.
Like that.
I hate
dude, that freaks me out. And to this day, it's one of those like hurdles I have to get over where I can be that free to just like act like a spaz and not give a fuck. But I literally will leave the room and I just go out in the hall and I just go walk around, get some fresh air, and then I listen for when the song's over, and then I walk back in and rejoin the class.
The interesting thing is I'm sure you don't mind dancing to like the music you like.
Well, yeah, like put on some James Brown and shit. Like I'll groove a little bit.
For sure.
But
I think it's just that I cannot dance
I feel
to that
so
music.
fake. It's like putting on a fake, like if my body doesn't feel like moving and I do it just by rote, it just feels so awkward. Like I literally have like awkwardity panic attack where I'm just like, I have to leave. I have
such a story for you. My ex, like somebody I dated a couple of years ago, I loved him because he was just like, yeah, like I'll go to a class with you. And I was like, great. It was when I just started getting into Kundalini yoga. So I was like telling everybody about it and, blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, I'll come to a class. And I was like, well, I'm going to a class tonight. He's like, I'll come to it. I was like, well, I don't know. It's a 3-hour workshop. He's like, yeah, sure. Why not? I'll go. So we go, and about 20 minutes into the workshop, my hearing aid battery died. So I was like, fuck, it's a 3-hour workshop. The teacher's speaking very softly, which you're not going to find with the LA crowd. And then some of the teachers in the Kundalini yoga, they're very like soft-spoken. And so I was like, okay, I have to go get a hearing aid battery now because I'm not going to be able to hear anything for 3 hours.
Is that hard to come by? Is it like a special battery?
No, I just had to like go out and go to Dwayne Reed and just, do it. But of course, 3 Dwayne Reeds didn't have the battery size I needed.
Right.
That time. So I was gone for like 45 minutes.
I'm just imagining the battery is super tiny.
It's super tiny.
Right.
Yeah. It's just, I mean, they're very easy to get, but, So I'm gone for like 45 minutes. So the whole time I'm thinking like, man, please don't let there be anything weird. Please don't let there be anything. Like, obviously it's going to be weird because it's Kundalini yoga, but I was like, don't let it be too weird.
Yeah.
So after the workshop, so I got back and finished the workshop. And then after I said, so what happened when I was gone? He's like, oh, well, he had us standing on our knees and we had to like put our hands behind our back and like go like this. And at the same time, like stick our tongues out And then he made us dance for 25 minutes.
Oh, and God.
I was just like, when I was gone, I was praying. I was like, please no dancing, please no dancing. Please.
Oh, poor guy. That's rough.
He loved it.
He did?
He was just like, that was cool.
Oh my God. Wow. Yeah, that's kind of where I draw the line. That happened to me the first time I took Gurmuk's class at Golden Bridge a few years ago, and it was like really intense. I was like, cool, I'm hanging in. And then she did one of the dancing like sequences, and it wasn't just that you had to sit there and like spastically do interpretive dancing. You had to go around the room like around in circles and like look in everyone's eyes as you're like spastically dancing. I'm like, that's like double jeopardy. Just going and looking at everyone's eyes that you don't know is like already weird, but like while you're dancing, like a mental patient is just like, oh my God. And that was the first time I was like, oh, there's a bookstore in the lobby. I was like, fuck this. And I literally just went out and kicked it and read a book for 10 minutes. And went back and I was like, cool, now I have an answer for those type of
that's so funny
exercises. Yeah. Cool. So I think we've got a pretty good understanding of where you've come from, what you've been up to, what have been some influential things that have benefited your life and will benefit our audience. What are you currently doing and what's next for you?
So this year's definitely been really transformative. I mean, I started to really get back. I definitely credit the Sat Kriya and last year's long Ekonkars getting back to my creativity and what I want to do. And you'll actually see that my Instagram changed, my vision. And it's funny because it's like, oh, it's Instagram, but it's an expression of my creative vision. And it's totally changed since January. You go back before that and you'll see it's more like hippie and yogi and this and that. So it really started to open me up to my creativity again. And that's brought a lot of opportunities. People are seeing that create new creative direction. Somebody messaged me yesterday. They're like, your art direction is phenomenal. It's somebody I actually respect. And I was like, wow, am I an art director? And I loved that because I never thought that that's a possibility. So I started wanting to consult for people. And so I let go of my own skincare line in January. I had a skincare line for about a year. That's what blew the brand up, blew Benshen up. And it was amazing. I just realized I liked the creativity aspect of it. The creation, the execution, the social media events and stuff like that. And a skincare line that I really respect and love brought me on as a creative consultant for them. And they actually just this morning, they're officially their full-time beauty editor.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so I'm beauty content editor. So I'm helping them redo their blog, and we're doing photo shoots and events and stuff like that. And they're an amazing brand. You want to share what
it's called so people can check it out?
Herbivore.
Herbivore? Oh,
Herbivore
cool.
Botanicals, yeah.
Cool.
And I love them. The whole brand is like amazing, and they're so sweet. And they've done an incredible job of building their brand on their own. So it's going to be really exciting to see what we can do the next few months. Next few months, next year, whatever.
Awesome, that's great.
Yeah, so
good for you.
I think I'm finally starting to embrace my position in the beauty industry. I was really resistant to it for a really long time because I was like, what's beauty, And then I had a conversation with Chris because my mentor and my mentor's mentor, they're treating people with cancer and autoimmune diseases and diabetes and people who are dying. And I'm like fascinated by beauty. So I was very afraid of that. I didn't think it was important. And Chris kind of kept pushing me to find that. And so it really was not until recently where I kind of was like, well, look how much I want to feel beautiful and how much effort and time and how much I just want that to feel that way. So why should that not be as important as someone who's sick and doesn't feel good about themselves? So I definitely think that this next year is really stepping into the beauty industry in a different way and bringing these amazing Kundalini practices, but kind of, there's the Piscean way, which is like everything's dogmatic and do it this way, this way. And Aquarius is just, the age that we're in now is how can I integrate everything so it works? And then I think that my generation, the generations after, it's really integrating everything. I mean, just bringing this, whether it's beauty or medicine or art and creativity, and how can I use these ancient practices for a more expanded experience in the modern day. So I really am excited about bringing the Kundalini yoga, the meditation, all this stuff that I've learned on the way into the beauty industry, which is one of the most interesting industries. It's blowing up right now, but it's also an industry that's really fueling, there's something wrong with you, you need to buy this to feel better about yourself. So how can we relook at how we use products instead of there's something wrong with you, buy this, to buy this because it makes you feel really good about yourself.
Right. Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, I totally relate to that. That's a lot of my intention with this podcast is sort of pulling in practices, principles, truths from all of these different teachings and kind of bringing it into one hub and bringing people like you on the show and just all these experts and fascinating people, kind of putting that in a container and going, here, world, like I'll save you 10, 20 years of your own, you know, erroneous in cases research and like just put it all here in front of you, you know, which is great. It's kind of, that's why I called the podcast The Lifestylist, because I used to like put different,
I love that.
put different
I don't know
pieces,
why you called it that.
Yeah, to put different pieces of clothing together to like make a look. And now it's like, well, the look's great, but how about we go deeper and like make an actual lifestyle? So I think about things in very much the same way. Yeah, it's cool. So right on. Good for you. Yeah, embrace the beauty, girl.
Thank you.
I mean, that's the thing. Like we're talking about clothes. It again depends on like intention. It's
totally,
you know, are you doing it out of like, oh, if you don't have Chanel lipstick, you're a piece of shit, or you know, or is it like you're doing it? Well, I really love this color red. Yeah, it's beautiful, and the creator gave me a certain aesthetic and a certain level of taste, and I can use that because it's marketable as well. You know, I don't see anything like unspiritual or unworthy about that. I have
a friend, Violette. One name.
Oh, okay.
Violette. She's a French makeup artist.
Okay.
She has a last name, but she's like known as Violette.
Okay.
And I love her because she is a huge figure in the beauty industry. I mean, monumental. She was just positioned as global beauty director for Estee Lauder.
Wow.
Yeah, she's huge. And I love her and adore her. She's super French. And we were sitting in the car. We were driving upstate a couple months ago. And I kind of knew the answer, but I actually wanted to hear it from a French woman. So I said, what's the difference between, you know, American women and French women, and why are one so much more, you know, they're so different? American women tend to be very insecure, and French women, European women in general, tend to be much more confident. And she says, you know, American women, they're like very, you know, neurotic and crazy. She's like, in the morning, I have my dandelion tea for my liver and make my skin really clear. And then at night, she's like, I can't remember the brand of it. She's like, I have this French wine that's like her favorite wine. She has to have it every single night, and she's like, and really good sex. And she's like, it's that balance that's not like the neuroses of like everything has to be perfect, you know. And I admire her because she's such a fixture in the beauty industry, but she's also extremely healthy, but she doesn't make the wellness the highlight of the beauty industry, if that makes sense. It's like it's not like you have to eat this to be perfectly beautiful. She uses the beauty products and makeup and everything to enhance the beauty that you already have, not that to hide anything. Right. And so she's really into the health and wellness and believes it, but it's like she really embraces the beauty industry as well. And I love that, and she's amazing.
We'll put her in the show notes.
You should.
Along with everything else that you've talked about. So those of you that are listening to this on audio, you know you can get the show notes by going to lukestorey.com, signing up for my newsletter, and I swear to God, we're going to put every goddamn link to everything that was discussed in this episode in there. Yeah. So before we close, I want to ask you my final question, and it's a 3-parter, and that is, who have been 3 teachers or teachings that have influenced you that you might want to share with the audience? I mean, you've already mentioned a number of them, but it could be a book, a philosophy, something that our people could then go find to look to for inspiration.
So, I mean, definitely Chris. He's been the biggest mentor, influencer. I send all my friends to him for any health issue that they have, and it ends up being the most mind-blowing. You know, what they thought was a health issue was something totally beyond that, and he's helped a lot of people really figure a lot of things out. Chris Chen, yeah. Got it. He's on 30th Street. Okay. So I'll send you the website. It's not very easy to Google. I mean, Rama and Guru Jagat and Hari Jeevan and Tej blew my life open. And then for the women out there, it's just the French culture. I mean, entirely. I just started following a lot of French influencers on Instagram, like Jeanne Demas and Violette and all these people that are just so confident and beautiful. And it's not really, I got to the point where I was so sick of diet and wellness and all that stuff that I just needed to see beauty and see confidence and see fashion again. And I loved that because they do things that we wouldn't necessarily do because we're being healthy, but they look healthier than 99% of us are. So I started really looking at French women, and I think that, you know, a lot of American women can learn a thing or two from the French. For sure.
I'll stand behind that.
Yeah, so I'll send you a couple links of my biggest, inspirations from the French women scene.
I'd appreciate that, and we'll definitely put them in the show notes. Yeah. Okay, and then in closing, where can we find you on your social media, website? Where do you want to direct people?
My Instagram, probably. I need to redo my website now that a lot has changed. My Instagram, which is _Benshen_.
Cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Desiree, for joining me today. It's been a great and enlightening conversation. Look forward to seeing you again. So there we go, ladies and gents. One more step on the ladder to enlightenment. What a fun conversation, right? I told you that she was a spiritually irreverent guest, and it was really fun to sit down and have such a casual, kind of just fun conversation with her. It wasn't so much an interview, but rather a talk I would have with someone after a yoga class. So it's great to meet kindred spirits, especially in a big city like New York City, where, you know, sometimes it seems like people aren't all that spiritual, but if you know where to look, you can find the gems, and Desiree is no exception. So make sure to follow her work and hit up one of her classes when you're in the city sometime. And speaking of hitting up, hit me up on Instagram. Follow me at Luke Storey. I'm doing a lot of really fun things over there, including running Instagram lives of so many of my interviews these days. In fact, the one that you just listened to ran on Instagram Live the day I did it at the hotel. So keep that in mind. You might just catch one of these things live and get to see all the behind-the-scenes action of how I screw up setting up the microphones and all the weird, awkward stuff that goes into actually the physical process of recording a podcast. I think this one went okay. I had help there that day from my assistant, Anthony, but sometimes I don't, and it gets weird. But anyway, thank you so much for listening to my show. Thank you for following what I do, for giving me great love on Instagram and sending me emails. You know how important it is to get feedback on your work if you put out any kind of creative work. It's always good to, you know, hear what people like and what they don't like, and helps me kind of keep refining the content and making sure that it's exactly what you want and what you need. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. In case you were spacing out in the intro, or you did that little 15-second fast forward trick, I know you do that shit sometimes during the intros, the ads and stuff. I see you. I see what you're up to there. Listen, don't miss next week's episode with my meditation teacher, friend, and mentor, Mr. Jeff Kober. He's a meditation teacher and an actor, and just an absolutely fantastically wise yet humble man. And this episode is not one you want to miss. It's a two-parter, and it's hardcore. It's deep. People watched it live on Instagram, and they were freaking out. It already got rave reviews from the audience, so why don't you be one of the audience members that checks it out next Tuesday and Friday? Subscribe to the show so you don't miss it. Hey! Don't forget to go to earthrunners.com and use the code Luke10 to save 10% off your minimal footwear. What's even cooler is they now have some custom wool tabby socks that allow you to wear the Earth Runners in colder weather. Really cool. earthrunners.com, Luke10.